Okay, so who have been to this kind of event before? Okay, not too bad. Not too bad. I guess, okay, then the house cleaning staff. So before I start, I want to thank Base 3 BBS. I want to thank Exactly Impact. Also, I want to thank Upside Foundation. Who here has heard of Upside Foundation?
Just now.
Perfect! Well, I'm surprised. Usually I only get 1 or 2 hands in the room, so that's great. So, what Upside Foundation is, I should actually play a clip, but I actually don't have my equipment here today, so I'm just going to talk about it. If you guys want to pursue entrepreneurship, check out the Upside Foundation. It's part of the 1% movement. So, what it does is, if you're a founder of some company, you can donate 1% of your company to that charity, and in turn, you will get a lot of the entrepreneurial resources. Also, this they don't write in the official script, but the founders of Upside Foundation in Canada is actually 3 VCs. So they specialize in funding startups, especially in consumer tech and fintech. So they're not going to officially tell you this, but if you actually sign up, like a lot of VC doors will be open for you. Now, what's the cost to you? Nothing, because you're only going to donate 1% and only realize that when your company is sold. Therefore, if you actually in the end made it, you don't care about 1%. If you didn't make it, you went bust, it didn't cost you anything. So that's the whole gist of it. So yeah, that is that. And so the format of the event, I should talk about the goal of the event. The goal of the event usually is that I have a lot of interesting friends, which I really enjoy in their entrepreneurial journey, and I want them to share their stories with the audience, which don't necessarily have access to their stories. That's how this whole thing started, and this is probably our 20th event. And because today is a small crowd, what I want to do is I want each one of you take about 10 seconds, introduce yourself, why you're here, what you do, and what you want to get out of this, so that the audience can actually tailor their moderated discussion to that. No objection, silence is consent. We'll start with you.
I just come here with my friend.
Do you want to, yeah, is there a particular topic or particular aspect of entrepreneurship that you want to hear? No? Okay, you're just here for information collection. Okay, you.
Yes, I just came in front and tried to know some stories.
Okay. Are you pursuing entrepreneurship or?
Yeah, I just came here to learn some stories.
Okay, alright.
Yes, my name is Enrico. I have my own consultancy. I've had it since 1999. And I'm basically trying to see how I can expand it into the future. Hopefully, I'll get some information tonight.
So I guess growth is probably it.
My name is Wenting Ma, and I'm interested in building an online education portal. That's why I'm here, and I want to learn some experience from both of you.
Education and education.
Yeah. In terms of how to build up the portal and attract users, and then building up the unique learning experience, and also how to apply for some fundings as well.
My name is George. I'm doing something really similar to Wenting here. I own an art studio, and we're trying to branch out to the online training program. So, which is why I'm here. To learn from both of the speakers how I can get started attracting users and hopefully get government funding.
Hi, I'm Jessie. I'm a wedding planner actually, so it's a little different, I guess, from what the speakers do today. I'm making are in the room tonight, but I'm always excited to learn about how other entrepreneurs grow in your business. So I'm just here to kind of get more information.
Hi, I'm Zoe. I'm an internal auditor at CIBC. I don't do any startups, but I'm very interested in this area. So as an outsider, I wonder how you select ideas and how to search for resources for these outsiders at the very beginning stage.
Hi, I'm Robin, and right now I'm working as an actuary. But I'm also with my friend, we are starting online tutoring business. So I know like speakers here has a lot of experience in education, online education apps. So we want to learn more about it.
Hi, my name is Charles. I have my own startup founding business. I heard about Soldier before from Mars Discovery. So I want to come here to hear about your stories. And on the other hand, I want to learn some marketing techniques from other gentlemen about that 150 million users. That's amazing.
What's your startup?
It's not announced yet. It's says Angeles for China.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Rob Klein. I'm a management consultant focused solely on the startup space. Been in the space for 20 plus years, primarily in technology. But I've also done consumer packaged goods. I'm here just to network.
He's actually our speaker for April. One of the speakers for April.
Wow.
Yeah. Who's next? Adam? Are you next?
Hey, my name's Gary. I'm one of the co-organizers of this event. So I'm currently running a called Bay Street Professional Groups. We're trying to attract all the young and passionate professionals around the GTA area. So I want to ask, the reason why I'm here is I want to listen more stories, how to get people from offline to online. So that's, yeah, because we have a lot of memberships on the local side, but not many on the online side.
Gary does amazing marketing. I have to say that.
Okay. Hi, I'm Ken. I'm working with Gary for the Bay Street Professional Groups. And then what I'm interested in is how to share your knowledge and then share your experience between the professions and students, and then how to attract those persons and then ignite their passion to share. So that is my major interest.
Yeah, hi, my name is Adam. My day job is working at BMO, and I'm also from Bay Street PBS, and I'm managing the corporate group in Bay Street PBS. And tonight I want to learn two things. One thing is how do you guys strike a balance of the day job, daytime job, and also the off time, the night job, working for your whatever business it is, and that must take a lot of time. How do you strike a balance over there? The second thing is how do you differentiate yourself from the similar platform, and how do you make yourself unique? So that's something I want to know.
The reason why Adam's asking that because he didn't mention, but he actually, can I say it?
Yeah, for sure.
He actually runs, the escape room?
Yeah.
He actually owns the store that runs that.
Very cool.
And profitable from day one. So, yeah, he needs balance.
I am Sarah. I'm still a student, but I'm here to want to hear your stories and how you get started up. Also, I want to know how you attract the 1.5 million users. Nice.
Hi, my name is Saber. My friends and I, we represent, my friends on the front row, we represent the Chinese Association of Master. We are still students, and personally I have a candy store in Hamilton, and it's a pleasure for us to be here today, invited by Bay Street, Gary and Ken. Thanks.
Are you thinking about taking that candy store online? Is that why you're here?
Oh, everything could be possible, right?
Yeah, just a thought.
Did you bring candy?
Hi, my name is Patrick. I'm a recent grad student, and I just currently curious about entrepreneurship. I just need some more stories about entrepreneurship tonight.
My name is Vicky, and I'm a tea importer and exporter. Currently, I supply teas from Japan and China to restaurants and also to cafes. And the reason that I came here because me and my partners are planning to open another business in the food industry. So we want to know more how to do the online marketing, and also we want to learn how to get the government fundings. And yeah, especially on social media, we want to attract more social media attentions, and so want to learn from you guys. Thank you.
Okay, actually today's a very targeted audience. Like more than 50% actually entrepreneurs, which I'm actually very happy. Okay, let's get started. AJ runs Sojo. I want you to talk about briefly what you do. And then Brian runs a bunch of things and he can talk about what he does as a start.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you guys so much for coming out. It's exciting to be here. It's exciting that someone in the audience has heard of us before. That's always very nice. So yeah, as Cindy said, my name's AJ. I run an organization called Sojo. What we do is we work with young people who are aspiring to start businesses and help them develop their business as well as develop a social impact aspect to their business. So thinking about your business beyond just your financial bottom line, but also what is the broader impact that you can have in the world, and how can you use your business to actually solve some of the social challenges that the world is facing. It sounds really nice, and it is, but it also can make your business that much more valuable. Can give you some great angles to marketing your business, to markets and people that you might not have otherwise thought of, and it's really the direction that business is going in. We've been around for a few years now, taken a couple of different forms. We started as a nonprofit. We've now incorporated as a for-profit social venture. And we do training programs. So we work with incubators and educators that are developing entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship programs and train them on how to develop these programs. We also have an online training platform that's, we've taken the curriculum that we've developed over the years and the expertise in how to help people develop these businesses and have put it into an online platform that provides a step-by-step process for people to use to develop their business and with a back end that allows educators to track and monitor the progress of their startups.
Great. So my name is Brian. I've known Cindy for I think close to 10 years now. Cindy and I went to IB together for undergrad. So I'm a finance and entrepreneur. That's the way to describe me. My motto is really you learn by doing. And so for myself on the day job, I work for a company called Revera. They own retirement homes in Canada, US, and UK. And so with my day job, I really do mergers and acquisitions. I've been doing it for 9 years. Worked in private equity and investment banking before. So really in the healthcare side. And so I really buy companies every day that basically own retirement homes. And it's very much a passion for me. I enjoy it. But that being said, I really like the entrepreneurial side too. So after the day job, I have, my passion projects. The first one I had done was a finance interview app. Was really how to get into investment banking. And so it was really like a simple question and answer app. I put it up on Android and on Apple, and it got mentioned in the Wall Street Journal about 5 years ago. So it's kind of fun. And then a couple months later, my mother gave my twin cousins, who are 15 at the time, an Ontario G1 handbook to help them pass to study for their driving test. And a friend of mine, we wanted to do something together on the side, and so we created a simple rule and sign question app to help people pass their G1 test. And it was free, monetized by ads, and we basically really built it for my cousin to help him pass the test, and it worked well for him. And then quickly thereafter, it went up to number 2 in education in Canada on Apple. And then we launched on Android, it went up to number 3 in education in Canada. And so we realized that we had something there, and so we expanded and created a US app, so which covered all states and all vehicle types. And then we did the same for Australia, and we've gone into 11 countries now. And so basically, it's the number 1 download driving test app in Canada, number 2 in US, number 3 in Australia, number 6 in UK. So we get about 650,000 people download the app a year. Again, it's free, monetized by ads. So the best way to describe it is if you have a question on the screen, you have a next button, go to the next question. It's really just at the bottom where you have the ads. That's how you make money. And a couple other things I've done on the side on the online education space. was I created a boat course. In order to get your boat license, you need to pass a course, a 3-hour online course. And so I created a course in Florida and California with a friend of mine. We have some help, so I'm not as involved on day-to-day. And then we're looking to expand into Canada now and buy a provider. So that's another aspect. And then the third aspect on the online side was I found some kids apps that were really focused on education, and they were only in English. So I bought the apps with a friend of mine, and we translated all of the apps into multiple languages. And so we got a bunch of downloads from other languages, and so we've had I think about 8 million downloads to date on that side, and it's really been you have a free app, and then you have basically an ability to do an in-app purchase for to subscribe to. So that's the biggest of the things to talk about.
That's a mouthful. Okay, I'm gonna start breaking it down. First of all, both of you guys, how do you make money? What's your revenue stream, and how much are you making? You have the right to decline, but
Yeah, sure. So we operate a B2B sales model. So we work directly with organizations that are serving these entrepreneurs. We don't generally sell directly to entrepreneurs, and we decided to take that route because the type of people that we're generally targeting are not often looking for paid services, but they are looking to sign up to programs, and those programs are looking to find ways to create more value for the students or for the participants that they're serving. They're often government-funded organizations, so incubators like Mars or Communitech, universities like Ryerson, and so there's value to them to be able to provide more and better services to these people that are signing up. So that's who we target. They also have more money than individual entrepreneurs, so it's an easier sale for us to go to one big organization, even if it takes us a few months to sell to them. We can generally make a bigger sale doing that than by trying to target individuals at a much lower price point. So that's our sales model. With our, if we do in-person training, which is some of the stuff that we do, it's a fee-for-service model. So depending on how many hours or how many days they hire us, that's how we price. With our platform, we have 2 different ways of pricing it. So some of the educators that we work with just want to provide an extra resource for their participants. So we've developed our own platform, so it's like the Sojo platform, where we have our own content. It's branded as our own, and people can just purchase individual licenses. So for example, we have some professors. We have a professor at Cornell University actually who just purchased a whole bunch of individual licenses for her class, for an entrepreneurship class she's running, to use as like a textbook. And so that's one stream of revenue that we generate, but then the sort of bigger sale that we make is through white labeling and customizing the platform for these organizations. So for example, one of our biggest customers, one of our first university customers was Laurier University. They wanted to provide a platform that was available to all students on campus who were interested in starting social ventures. And so they wanted it to look like theirs, they wanted it to feel like theirs, they wanted to have their own sort of Laurier.com login URL, and so we were able to produce that, create it. There was certain content that they wanted created unique to Laurier. The way that our content is designed, we link to a lot of other resources, so they wanted us to customize those resources so that they were Laurier resources. And so those are the bigger sales that we make. Those generally start around $10,000 and then go up from there, depending on how many users the institution is going to be bringing on and what features they want. So an institution that really cares about tracking their students, really cares about measuring the amount of engagement and sort of following their activities will be interested in one of those custom platforms. a professor who's just interested in providing a curriculum or a textbook or an additional set of resources to their students, they'll probably just purchase a handful of individual packages.
So your source of revenue is training, license, and sales. Not to the entire school, but to some schools in some institutions or programs.
Right.
That's why your sales cycle is much shorter.
Right. Yes, so this is something you had asked me about before.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Because selling to schools isn't easy. Trust me on this one. Selling to any institution isn't easy. And I was really surprised her sales cycle is actually pretty short. So if any of you guys want to get into the sales channel to like institutions and schools, like she's the one that can open the door. Basically, that's what I'm trying to get.
Yeah, definitely. A ton of you guys are talking about creating education products, and I don't know how many of you are looking at selling to universities. It can be really tricky, but you need to just go in with a strategy. So if you think about the way universities are funded, there's not generally sort of one giant pot available for a product or a service for all students. Usually each faculty or each department has their own pot of money and they can spend it on what they want. So the business school will have money to support resources for business students, or the Faculty of Arts has resources to support students in the Faculty of Arts. And so if you go in saying, I want to just sell to everyone, you're going to have a really, really hard time doing that because there just isn't a budget that is generally available for all students or to support all students like that. But if you go in really targeting who it is you're trying to sell to, you'll likely have a much easier time. So for us, the example of Gloria is a little tricky because in that case it was something made available to all students. It was a special grant that they had received from a private foundation that was designed to support social innovation activity on campus. So it was a really unique instance. But since then, most of the other universities that we've sold to, we target specific incubators that they have on campus. Some of them have centers for social entrepreneurship or centers for entrepreneurship. And so those are the people, we go to them and we try and sell to them. And that's our access point. And they generally have their own budget that they can make budget decisions around and can move more quickly. And then the other thing to know is what level of amount of money most of these people can approve before they have to go get additional approvals. So most faculty heads or department heads have the ability to spend up to $10,000 without needing additional approval, and so that's why our prices start there. It's not a coincidence. And that's, we generally go in saying, this is the starting point. We can build a custom build for you at this level. And if it works out really well in the first year and you want to add, you want to double or triple the number of users, then the price will go up, but you'll be able to make the argument that much better to your superiors to increase the budget because we'll have a track record of success that you can build off of.
You definitely avoid my question, which is the most interesting part. Are you guys profitable?
We are sustainable right now.
Okay, you know what I'm trying to get, right?
Yeah.
Either a range or either can you throw me a number? Like, what can you tell me?
Yeah. So, we're still investing really heavily in our platform development. So, we're making it, if we weren't looking to improve our platform and make it more scalable, we would be profitable at what we're doing right now. But we're at a stage where we're just continually reinvesting all of our profits back into.
And that's key for the real growth in the future, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like right now, the way that our platform is designed, it costs us a lot of money every time we do a unique deployment. So we're spending a bunch of our money to invest in the platform so that we can reduce the cost of each deployment so that it'll be more profitable.
And that's pretty much unavoidable for any startups.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Good. Brilliant.
Okay, so for the driving test apps, so they're free and I just monetize them by ads. So So basically for the ads, I don't go out to GM or car companies, insurance companies. I basically just go to Google AdMob and I get the code from Google AdMob. I put it on the page, and I don't have to deal with going after any customers to put the ads up. And so really, my focus is really just trying to get the most number of users as possible.
At what point did you start doing that?
Pardon me, sorry?
At what point did you start doing the ad?
So I put the ad on right away. There's no cost. You just you create an account at Google AdMob, and it's literally having your programmer just insert this little code onto your app. And then anytime someone clicks on the app, as long as you make more than $100, then Google will send an basically money goes directly into your account.
I'm gonna try tonight.
So it works well.
Practical tips.
And then in terms of users, so while the user base is quite high, obviously I would not be making too much from it because it's a free app, and so really it's call it 10 to 15 cents per click type of thing, or really per person that you'd be making. And so I've really spent a lot of time in optimizing the placement of the ad, which is really important. And because you want to have a higher click-through rate. Higher click-through rate also means Google likes what you're doing, and Google takes a 30% cut, and Google basically is incentivized to find the best ads for you. So while I could be better off going to GM insurance companies, because I have a day job and I want this to be as simple as possible, I don't have any involvement with customers or with really on the supplier side. So that was my goal there. So it's more maintenance free.
Which is the unique feature of a tech startup.
Yes,
right?
yeah. So this one. For the boat course that I had created, so basically it's a $30 cost for a person to take the course. And then with that you get your official boating license in Florida or California, and then we would mail that to the customer. And then for the kids apps, so basically I have a number of free apps, and I provide them with basic functionality. So let's say they're learning several songs. On the app I might have 10 songs, but only 3 would be available. And so if they were to use it and they want to unlock it, I'll give one or two of them more for free. But if they want to unlock everything, then it would cost $2. So that's really the business model for each of those 3. So one's free, one is sort of like a freemium, the other one is paid. And really want to learn as much as I can from those different models.
So it's basically service and ad.
Yes.
Right? And so far, I guess the big puller is still ad, is that?
Yes, yeah. The ad one works the best for me, but it's also because I've been doing that the longest for about 5 years, whereas the boat stuff I just started this year.
I remember that 5 years ago, me and him were in a cafe, and it was a miserable winter, just a very depressing day. And I was like, "What's up with you?" And then he told me this idea, and he says with such a straight face, and I'm like, "Is it going anywhere?" He's like, "Well, we're just starting." And I'm like, who would use that? And that was in my head until later, and he told me, "Oh yeah, I just hit my 1.5 million users." I'm like, great, it actually works. So pursue your dreams. You omitted my question as well.
So people will be able to figure that out for the driving test stuff, and just from the boat stuff, I'm really just starting there. So it's really just been under a year, and I think the business is profitable, but in the same way for yourself, I'm looking to potentially buy a Canadian provider, right? Or also go into more states. I'm in 2 states today for boat courses. I can easily now launch into other states. The incremental cost isn't much, but it's more so you're also investing back into the platform.
Great. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. I want to talk about numbers, because I think that's the meat of today's session. For AJ, what I want to know is, how did you scale? How did you literally become from social enterprise 0 to, having clients in Africa? Africa, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's exciting.
Exactly.
We just wrapped our first international project with an economic development NGO in Tanzania that's using social enterprise to do local economic development, which is pretty cool. Yeah, didn't see that one coming when we started.
So basically for you, what I'm guessing the audience, including me, would be very interested in, how did you actually grow the sales? How did you scale? how did you get in, how did you scale? And for Brian, definitely, how the hell did you get that many downloads and that many people on the app so that people can possibly replicate some of the strategies?
Yeah, so for us, I think this is interesting because we have such different business models and different ways of targeting folks. So because we are B2B, we are going after large organizations. You know, a lot of these sort of hacking user growth tactics just don't even apply to what we're doing. So a lot of it was good old-fashioned relationship building. We did a lot of research into who we thought our market would be. You know, who are the organizations doing this stuff in the world of social entrepreneurship? It's still a very emerging space. Even the world of entrepreneurship support and enterprise support is still relatively emerging space. So, you know, a few weeks of research kind of helped us map out most of the ecosystem in Canada and the US. There's a bunch of key sort of umbrella organizations that are doing this work. So one of the big ones is an organization called Ashoka. They are an organization that has been around for 30 years that talks about social innovation, social entrepreneurship, but they have a program under them called Changemaker Campuses. And so these are different universities and colleges and high schools that are certified as Changemaker Campuses, and to get that certification, you have to have a certain amount of this kind of activity taking place on your campus. So that was, you know, we looked for different organizations like that had, you know, lists basically of people who could be potential clients of ours who we, you know, knew they were already doing this stuff, they were interested in this stuff. Same with in Ontario, you know, regional innovation centers like Mars and Communitech and these folks, you know, we went through the different lists of organizations supporting these kinds of startups. And then I just started reaching out to them. I did a lot of cold calling. I went to a lot of networking events. I did a lot of follow-up emails. I, you know, said, thanks for chatting with me. Do you know 3 people you can introduce me to? And that was really how we started to build relationships. And one of the other tactics that we used was having this training component to what we do. You know, people who are very pure tech sometimes think, you know, you don't want to have any sort of in-person, you know, in-person is overhead, right? But for us, that was actually a great way to generate leads because we could go in, do this great workshop, get a great response from students. It's, you know, relatively small amount of money for the organization to pay to bring us in and see what we do. But then we would use that as an opportunity to demo our platform and talk about how, you know, they could take what we had in the classroom and grow it, you know, 10x across their student base or across their user base for a relatively small amount of money. And so, you know, there's a lot of just hustling to get to that point.
So to recap, a lot of research,
yes,
a lot of talking to people in the industry and having them refer you over, then you build a sales pipeline.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a practical strategy, I think, if you actually execute it well.
Yeah, it was a fairly traditional sales strategy, but because of that, the relationships that we built are really, really strong. We get really positive feedback from all of our customers. We get tons of referrals. Our customers referring us to other people. We have a nice buzz going in this community. So it's definitely, you know, it's been a year, and we're just really starting to see it pay off now, which is great.
Actually, a shortcut for whoever that wants to get in educational space local here. Probably Adrian has a whole list of people.
I can give you lists, yes, definitely. Yeah, I can shorten your research time.
Don't edit that out. Mark her words. Awesome. Okay, Brian?
I find it really interesting with AJ and I because we're both in the online space, but we have a different business model. Yours is more B2B, and on my side it's more B2C, and because of that, it really drives a different strategy, right, for marketing. So for myself, I'll talk about the driving apps. I think that's the best story to really talk about. I was the first to market to create like a driving test prep app. I really came up with the idea because I created like a finance interview app, and then my mother had given like the handbook to my cousins, and the sort of a light just switched where I could probably do the same thing for driving tests. So what really helped for me was being first to market, and so that really helped me get up to the top of the app stores in the first month on Apple and Android. But quickly thereafter, because it's really it's very easy for someone else to come up with another app that is similar to it. So it's really important you want to stay at the top. So how did I do that? The first thing is if you look at rankings on app stores, the top charts are really, they're country specific. So what I did was I created country specific apps. So I created the Canadian driving test app, and it would have all the provinces and then all the vehicle types. I did the same thing in the US, UK, and Australia. And so that really helped to make sure that I was at the top and I was maximizing downloads for the country. So that was the first bit, and also because the app had the name Canadian driving test in the description, I had all of the different tests. It really helped on the app SEO side for when people were searching. So I think that's the first bit, and I think the other interesting part was I really did the lean startup, where myself and my business partner, we just funded this ourselves. And because our cost per user, the revenue we're going to make per user is only 10 to 15 cents, we can't go and advertise on paper. We really can't spend money on AdWords. We can't go on Facebook and really spend money. You have to be so creative in being able to market this to users. And so it's really maximizing, like just thinking about the App Store, how to get to the top. Being first to market again really helped. One funny story was really listening to your users too. So there's a few people that started asking for a Spanish app for my US app, and so I created the Spanish app, a Spanish version, and it was right after January. So it was in January last year, so January 2015. My downloads just spiked, and I had no idea why. It was about 4 or 5 times higher than all my English speaking downloads. And then I was just looking online, and I found out that the California government allowed illegal immigrants to get their driver's license. And what happened was, I think a lot of people in the state who were illegal immigrants, they would get into a car accident, and they'd just drive off. And so there'd be no way to follow that person. So if they had a driver's license, you can connect them to their to the license plate, and so you can actually catch the person too. And so anyways, it's just interesting. You never know what happens, but I think it also goes to just speak to what your users are telling you. So in this case, they're really telling me to go and create a Spanish app, and I do have plans to go into other languages that make sense. And I also didn't really have competitors in those other languages, like whether it's the driving app or the kids apps. So it's really finding that niche market and really trying to own it and really listen to your customers as you grow.
Any questions so far?
So I know that before you jump into any of the apps, you probably have done some research in finding your niche market. So can you share us how you find your market? Because once you find that, it's easier for you to just rank up. Great question.
Repeat the question.
Sure. So really the question is, what research do you do before deciding to move forward with the business plan? So I think for the driving test apps, the first thing I thought was I created an Ontario really G1 driving test prep app, and I really figured out how many people live in Ontario, and then I'd be taking how many people are 15 and 16 years old, because that's really your target market. Then you'll also have people who are immigrants that come to Canada and also to take the driver's license a later year. So really that told me what was the size of the target market. And then I also looked at, I think that was the first one. In this case, I was the first to market, so I just thought it would be a unique opportunity. And I could figure out like the revenue per user from my previous app, so I can get just a rough sense of what the potential market size is. And then I think the other part is once you do it, you really learn by doing too, and maybe your market can be bigger because I create like a Spanish app or something else. So I think it's really listening to your users because your target base may change a bit.
Yeah, so we're obviously a little bit different I'd say we.
This is actually a great point for you to talk about what happened before you turned that for profit and the whole funding situation.
Yeah, so we're a little bit different in that we sort of started with this vision around supporting young social entrepreneurs, and then figured out what the market opportunity looked like for that. So what Cindy's referencing is when we first started Sojo about 3 years ago, there was actually someone else who founded it. She founded it as a not-for-profit organization with really just the goal of inspiring people to think about business differently and to think about having a broader impact when they're developing businesses and to help young people feel empowered to actually pursue a new way of doing business. So it was much more of an awareness campaign, I guess you could say, than a business model. And that was sort of how it started. I got involved. I was working in government at the time. That's my former career path. And started volunteering because I was just really interested and excited by this concept. She had to leave suddenly for a number of reasons, and I took over the organization. And over the next year or so, as we were kind of pursuing this vision, we realized two things. One, that we had no idea how we were ever going to generate revenue. We had received a fairly large government grant to get us started as a nonprofit, but
guess how much government grant? In my mind, it's usually like 10K, 20K. Guess how much she got?
100K.
75.
100K? 75?
so we got $300,000 over 3 years to.
And how the hell did you pull that off?
Yeah, so it's pretty unique. It definitely was one of those things where the universe just collided and created a great opportunity. So our nonprofit launched talking about youth social entrepreneurship when not a lot of people were really doing that or talking about it. So much like you said, sort of being early into the market and being one of the first to really be talking about this stuff from a youth perspective. And right around the same time, the Ontario Trillium Foundation had a large pot of money that they were looking to invest in a small number of organizations to really try and kickstart the infrastructure in the province to support these young entrepreneurs who wanted to start social ventures. And so, we applied. The previous founder, her name's Kanika, she was quite a force to be reckoned with when it came to lobbying and arguing our case. And so we were one of 7 organizations that received a nice chunk of funding over a number of years to do this work. So that's what really gave us the runway and the opportunity to focus ourselves kind of wholeheartedly on supporting young people, on understanding their needs, on doing this research, and developing different tools and programs that would be supportive for them. But what we saw was that as much as these big grants are a godsend, in so many ways they can also be a bit of an Achilles heel because you ramp up and you get big, and then all of a sudden you look, okay, a year or two down the road, you see that you have this big cliff coming, and it can be really, really challenging to find similar types of grants that can fill that void. And so we saw that coming. We saw that was, that the likelihood of us ever getting another grant like this was slim to none, and that has been proven very true. And what we also saw, though, was that there was this market opportunity, that there were these organizations that were looking to pay someone to come in and help them develop programs And we also saw this big technology opportunity where coming up with a training product, there wasn't really anything in the market at the time that combined both the educational sort of content and curriculum with the project management tools for startups and for educators to track startups. And so what we decided to do was incorporate a for-profit social venture as a separate entity from our nonprofit. And to use that to build out this business. And we did that for a number of reasons, mainly because looking down the road at potential investment opportunities, particularly in tech, a for-profit is a much more attractive thing to invest in than a nonprofit for most investors, and for tech it's much easier to scale. And our vision is to get to a point, the nonprofit still exists. It does some sort of community-based training programs and boot camps. We also are developing a learning assessment and evaluation framework for social entrepreneurs. And the vision is to get to a point where the business is profitable enough that we can take some of the money that we're generating through that and flow it into the nonprofit to use it to sustain both organizations.
So you heard it right. I think the strategy was actually brilliant. So get more than $250,000 from government, do your research for a few years, and use that, set up a new for-profit company, and make money. And do social good, right?
But while still supporting that nonprofit.
Correct,
yes. We don't want to, we're not abandoning it for this business.
You're making money while doing social good, which is a great
Yes,
thing, right?
absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. That's actually the first time I've heard that strategy. I haven't heard that one before, so that's pretty good.
It's tricky to fund to start any kind of social venture startup.
Well, that's going to be my next question. How was the funding situation? I think you said you bootstrapped it, you said you got sent money from government, I guess. For those of us who are maybe not so lucky, bootstrapped it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, so you know, we had this money. We were at the very end when we incorporated the business. We were pretty much right at the end of that funding, and so you know, we had the opportunity to spend time doing this research and really understanding what our business model and what we wanted to build would look like. But when it came to actually building the business itself, we basically bootstrapped that. It was really important, both legally as well as morally, that we didn't take the nonprofit money and funnel it into the business itself. So we took some of the insight and the knowledge that we accumulated working through the nonprofit, but we created a real firewall between the finances so that everything that we built through the business was independent and separate and accounted for separately. And so doing that, we basically bootstrapped it ourselves. We put a bit of our own money into investing in our first prototype of the platform, and got out there and started selling as fast as we could.
Who here is bootstrapping right now?
That's true.
Good. Anybody else? Of all the people, I know you have your business. How did you bootstrapping? Any other financing option that you guys had? Sweat equity? Loans, maybe from the bank? Parents, I see. I forgot, this is a Chinese crowd. Parents is called the bank in China. Okay. Cultural differences. Great, okay. Any questions so far?
I got a question. For AGA, you mentioned you built that finance firewall for the. I think that's very important. And how do you find the lawyer, the accountant to do that?
So we have separate accountants for both organizations. So we really operate them as two completely independent organizations. We aspire to getting to a point where the business, where we'll have a licensing or a funding agreement between the business to support the nonprofit. We're not there yet, and so until that point, we really operate two completely separate businesses. It's kind of a pain, to be blunt, because it's twice the paperwork, it's twice the accounting, it's twice the board meetings. And yeah, but it's really important, you know, for the integrity of both the nonprofit and the business to keep both of them very separate. And when we do have that crossover, that it is the business supporting the nonprofit and not vice versa.
Okay, that.
Okay, I have a question for Brian. Right? Brian. Okay. You mentioned that the initial marketing of your app is just purely put them on the Apple or Android store, just like people to choose. But there can be millions of apps there, right? There must be some marketing strategy that you put for the initial start to let people know. With any advertisement, any marketing company?
Yeah, good point. So now there's one thing I did do was I reached out to a few bloggers who review apps, so both on Apple and on Android. So that also, that also helped as well. There was one key blogger on the Android side that really helped, I would say, as well. And so I also separately have, since then, maybe about 2 or 3 years ago, I did reach out to a number of newspapers and columnists, etc. So we did get mentioned in the Chronicle Herald, which is a newspaper in Halifax. Got mentioned in the Toronto Star, I think about 2 years ago, and then we had got into one other local newspaper as well. And I think like doing that strategy, I got a ton of no's, right? Whenever you reach out to a number of columnists, you just don't get a response. It's really that's your no. And so while it could be disheartening, you just got to think if you put out, let's say 60, 70 emails, if you get one back, like that really is a success if you're able to have it mentioned in the in a newspaper. And that was something that we'd wanted to do. From a couple people I know in the startup space, they publish articles 3 times a week. And it's really like basically an insurance comparison website he has. And he would send this out to these columnists that are really focused on finance, personal finance. And now that he's been sending these out 3 times a week, he has a really good rapport with a number of columnists. And he actually, whenever he publishes an article, he will send individual emails to about 60 columnists. And it would take him probably an hour and a half, every second day to do. But he found that to be really important so that he's mentioned on websites that have really good SEO rankings. And that way they provide links to his website. So that's one strategy that if I had more time, because I have a day job, that's something that I would definitely love to do. But because I'm a bit more strapped for time, but that's one strategy that another person has done that's worked out well. If you are really following that lean startup and you didn't have as much, you didn't have that cash at disposal, it's a great way to try and get exposure.
Okay, so do you have many reinforcement to help you with that? So for the bloggers, do you contact them through personal connections, or you just pay for them, or just cold call, like what do you do with that?
So what I did was, for bloggers as well as the newspaper columnists, I would Google Android app blogger and blogger and driving or driving, like basically there's a bunch of different terms I use, and I found a number of bloggers that would be potentially interested in the space. On the columnist side, I would think of all the major metropolitan areas in North America, and then I'd reach out to the columnists that are in the drive, basically drive columnists for the driving test apps, and then I'd send out emails to them. So you really want to be as targeted as possible and try to be in their shoes. I also did some research in terms of how to reach out to some columnists as well, just like how to write your email. So that was the way I reached out.
So you did the same in Canada and US, because US the population is 10 times as Canada, so I think the competition must be more fierce than Canada, right? And you said you are number 2 on the US store. So how did you do that on?
So more so, go up to it's really number 2, like on the driving test side.
Yeah.
I think it's maybe around number 40 in education that's free in the US on Android. But it's really, I think having the Spanish version also helped. too, to be able to try out downloads as well. And so I think it's just, it's a combination of that being first to market and also a little bit of reaching out to bloggers as well.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question on working with bloggers. So when you're working with bloggers, do they usually confirm with you before publishing the articles about how they're going to review your apps? Like, is it going to be a bad or a good review? No.
It really differs. Sometimes the bloggers will reach out and they'll really put together a story about your app.
Okay.
Other times they will basically copy and paste what I had written and put it onto their blog. So it's really a combination. So just make sure that what's in your email. I guess then what that led me to do was I said, here's a little bit about me. Here's something you can put on your blog. You can just literally copy and paste because that's what someone else did. So you sort of try to tailor to them.
To make it easier for them.
Yes. Yeah.
And then also, just one more question. Do they usually charge you, the bloggers? Do they ever take cuts or mention that to you?
So for the ones that I reached out to, they didn't. I know that there's definitely some bloggers that I'm sure charge for it, but I didn't pursue that. I just did more or less the lean startup.
Thank you.
One more question. Sorry, Brian. I know I have busy on the mic for almost 10 minutes now. So I just have a question. Actually, even before you go to bloggers, so I want to know sort of the story when you initially started to develop the app, right? The app, could take so much money and so much time. You have to figure out what's the logic, what's the business requirement. You have to talk with the developers, the UI, all sorts of different things. So I want to know, like, when you initially start to do that, how much time it takes before you actually move to the Apple Store, and what's the story behind it?
Sure. So I think for the really good thing about, I guess, on the tech side for the business to consumer, rather than the app side, is it doesn't cost too much to create an app. And so I had an initial concept of, we mentioned about the handbook that my mom gave my twin cousins. And so I knew that I wanted to create an Ontario G1 driving test, and I wanted to have rule and sign questions. And so I came up with myself and my friend, we came up with all the content. So we came up with all of the actual questions, so about 300 questions on rules and signs. And then there's a website called Elance, which is now called Upwork. So if you go to upwork.com, you can post a project and freelancers from all over the world can bid on that project. So you'll get really good people for really cheap. And so for the first time I was doing it, I did it offshore. So I've used programmers in India as well as in China. And it's both good and bad. Most of the time it's been a good experience, but now that it works, I do have a person I use onshore. But for the first time, you'd think like the actual cost of creating the app was very low. It was actually, so it was $500 was the cost of the app, and I made that back quickly. But the thing is, when you created that app, it's not the best app really, it's like a prototype, right? And so it allowed me to have that initial traction to really prove that it worked. So it broke even in a month. And so that really told me I found something, and I'm able to now do this on a bigger scale where I do it for all of Canada, and you find a better programmer as well.
Just a follow-up question for using developers, because you use the developers and they essentially they have the source code and everything, rebrand it into a new app, exactly like yours.
It's a really good question. So let's say I have a programmer in India that I work with. I can sign an NDA with them, and you protect yourself legally, but ultimately, are you really going to go to India and hire a lawyer and go after them? No, it'll be many more times what the cost of that app was. And so I know that I didn't have a multi-million-dollar idea, and this isn't worth $2 million kind of thing. The other thing where I got comfortable though was ultimately a lot of these programmers rely on the website for their earnings, their career earnings. And so if you put as feedback to say this person stole my app or my idea, you can one, it'll be bad reputation for him, but he can also get banned from Upwork, and so it has a real life consequence to him. if he just takes the idea. So that's more or less how I got comfortable.
AJ, do you have any, because you have developers too, do you have that sort of concern?
Yeah, so we did, so not quite the same, but we worked with contractors, contract development firm, when we built the first version of our platform. They were onshore, and it was a much bigger contract than for the app, and part of that was because we needed a firm that we knew from some of our early testing. We had mocked up a really rough prototype to just see if this was something that would work. And one of our very early pieces of feedback was on the importance of design and usability and how it looked and felt, and just the nature of what we were building. We wanted to work with a firm that was both a design and development firm. And so, but yeah, they were contract, they weren't in-house. And so when we were writing the contract out, we had to make sure that there were very clear clauses within it about who owned the IP, when IP was transferred, like, at every, it was a 6-week contract, so at, every week a certain milestone would be hit, and at that point, we would take ownership of that IP, and then what would happen at the end of the contract, very clearly laying out how the source code would be transferred to us, what were all those different assets that we would take control over, and you want to make sure that you have that stuff really clearly written out in a contract right up front. In our case, they were across the street, and we probably would have gone after them. It was a big enough contract that it would have been worthy of pursuing if something went wrong. So we wanted to make sure we had a really strong contract that would back us up.
Okay, last question to tie this off, and then it's Q&A period afterwards. What would the number 1 or 2 or 3, like the key things you think are the key right steps that you did that made you, I guess, today where you're at? And I guess that ties into what you want to share, like if the audiences are kids. If you were to tell your kids, what do you want them to take away?
Yeah, so, I would say, much like what's been said, some of the things that we did right early on was taking a lean approach, but very much taking the mindset of experimenting. That we were just going to test a whole bunch of stuff and see what worked. Just the nature of what we're doing. We weren't a tech-first company, and so really getting out there into the field and working with people directly and understanding what is it that they need, what are those questions that they're asking, what are the points, what does their journey of starting their business look like, and what are all those points within it where they hit gaps or roadblocks, or what is it, like really getting inside their heads and then developing a product based off of that. Was, I think, the right way of doing it, and sort of testing it all along the way to make sure we were on the right track. Focusing on selling really quickly. I think one of the best pieces of advice that I heard when I was starting out was something I read on a blog somewhere, but it said if you're not embarrassed by your first product, you waited too long to launch. And so that's something that I kind of kept with me, because it's never going to be perfect. Whatever you're building, it's never going to look like it looks inside your mind. At least not until you hit that Series B or C jackpot and you can actually invest in it the way you want. It's never going to feel good enough. But if you wait until it feels good enough to start selling it, you've just waited too long. I'm surprised, to be really blunt, by some of the stuff people pay for. Because I'm like, really? But we could be so much better. But, listen to your customers. They'll tell you if it's good enough, and they'll pay for it if it's good enough. And then once it's good enough and you get in there, they'll have a real incentive to tell you how they want to see it made better. And that's the most valuable advice that you can get. So yeah, just get out there and sell as fast as you can, and then use that to learn. Like you can learn when you're not making money just as easily as you can learn while you are making money. So, aim for the latter. And then, yeah, I guess to my kids, pursue your vision. If you believe in something and you have an idea, like, don't think you're crazy. We all think we're crazy. None of us feel like we know what we're doing. But just do it anyway, because you probably have a much better idea of what you want to do than anybody else in the world. And don't assume anybody else has your vision, because it's probably unique to you, and it'll never exist if you're not going to do it.
Well said. Very well said.
I echo a lot of things AJ has said. I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is you really learn by doing. And don't be afraid to experiment too. I thought of apps to start off with because I really liked how you can have a mobile phone, and this mobile phone is going to have the highest penetration, more than TVs or other things. And you're able to get your potential market or your distribution is quite large. Really, it is global, but also it's really cheap to be able to try something out. To create an app, it costs several $100s. It took a bunch of my time, but the time I was willing to spend that time, and I really learned by doing. I'm really good app developer. When I first started, no, I don't do the programming. I have a programmer that does it. I'm the person that comes up with the concept, and it's really learned by doing. And I think the second thing is you learn also by listening. And in this case, it's really listening to your user. What does the user want? Really try and get feedback from your customers or from your user base, and really understand what exactly they're looking for today, but also in the future as well. So the thing that really helped for me was understanding that there are, just on the Spanish side, there's a huge potential market out there, and more money is made on the Spanish side than there is on the English side for like the US app, for example. And I wouldn't have known that if you didn't listen to the customer. So I'd say really listen to the customer. And I think also the third one is your responsibility and how much time you want to put into it. So in my case, it's really a side project, and I have a full-time job, and I want to make sure I do well at my full-time job. And so for me, I chose something there, more in the tech space, where I could come home, my wife goes to bed, and I'll work from 11 p.m. until 1 a.m. most nights on some stuff related to this. And my business partner, when we're 50-50 on it, he also has a full-time job as well. So it's really understanding, the roles that you have, as well as if you have business partners or employees. And just know that, be mindful of every person has their own battle, every person has a different way of doing things, and really making sure that if you do have a partner, you're going to be with that partner for a long time in doing it, and you really want to make sure that you work well together. So it's really, I guess, it's know your roles, but also be really conscious of the partner that you're going to, or partners that you're going to work with.
So I guess experimenting, which I heard from both of you, learning by doing, finding a partner, and just pursue your dreams. As easy as that. Okay, question time.
Okay, the question for AJ. I know you started from NPO, right? And then you want to try. Although you said you build a firewall between NPO and full profit, but it's kind of pain. It's kind of pain, right? It's kind of painful for you, right?
Yeah.
So what's your future plan? You want to keep one, get rid of the other, or you want to keep this parallel in the long term?
Yeah, great question, and to be honest, a very live question that we're asking ourselves right now is what is the future of our nonprofit? I think both myself and my business partner, and I couldn't agree more with what Brian said about the importance of picking the right people to work with. When we sort of examine what is it that motivates us to be doing this, it really is the business side of things that we're excited about, and what we're doing through the business. And the nonprofit was there's still definitely stuff there that's exciting, but it was it's not sort of our primary motivator. At the same time, we see, you know, there's some different projects that we're currently working on and that we'd like to continue working on through the nonprofit that really make sense to live within a nonprofit and within this nonprofit, and are probably not things that we would want to absorb into the business. There's no sort of path to revenue through them. There's not a lot of value add to the business. It just wouldn't make sense. And so, you know, one of the things that we're thinking is, you know, up to this point, through this grant, we have been employees of the nonprofit with a board of directors sort of managing us. Where I see myself going is moving out of the nonprofit entirely, potentially joining the board, continuing to have sort of a say in the strategic vision of it, but really kind of handing the day-to-day work off to someone else, or shifting to very project-based work. So, you know, instead of having this, you know, like I said, getting that big grant was a bit of a double-edged sword in the sense that it gave us this tremendous opportunity, but it really pushed us into creating an organization that had ongoing operating funding and had quite a bit of overhead, employee costs, things like that. That, you know, when we step back and say, okay, what does this look like if we didn't have that funding? Is that funding essential for us to achieve the things we want to achieve through the nonprofit? I don't think it is. I think that if we were to go after, you know, project-based grants and hire project managers to execute on things as they come up or as they become interesting to us, that's probably the direction we would go in. So, you know, we would see both would continue to exist, but we would see the priority of them shift, where you know, the nonprofit at the beginning was sort of the main thing, and the business was much smaller, and now the business will grow. And if the nonprofit continues to stay the same size or grow, it would be probably through the leadership of somebody else.
Okay, a following question on the team, right? A great vision cannot be achieved without a great team, right? Okay, but since you build, you need both a crew on the non-profit side, a crew on the profit side, just double the team. But how, and use that, you reach out to 11 countries, reach multiple, a dozen of universities, business schools. But that's a definitely different business model as brand. Brand just build an app and put on store and doesn't need to spend much time. How do you maintain, and how do you find this person and maintain a relationship with them? You have to spend hours talking to them, and how do you keep that?
I don't sleep. So just for the record, it's Brian who's in 11 countries. We're in 3 now. But yeah, no, I mean, it's exhausting. Like, there's no two ways about it, and it's not sustainable in its current form for me to be the person leading the vision of both. And that's something that, you know, we weren't sure whether the business would take off. We weren't sure whether the nonprofit would continue. You know, there's a lot of uncertainty, and we're getting to a place now where we're starting to see that path sort of get clarity in what's going to happen, and see that there is, you know, we have something here with the business, and it's something that can really grow, and so we want to focus on that. And at the same time that fundraising for the nonprofit is a struggle. You know, we got this one awesome grant early on, and that was amazing, and it was a blessing, but it's not, you know, it's not replicable, and it's not easy to continue to do that. So up until this point, we really have been splitting ourselves, you know, doing the business in some ways off the side of our desks, and continuing to do the work of the nonprofit at the same time. And splitting the time of myself and my co-founder between the two. But yeah, it's not sustainable, and so that's why, you know, the two of us, like I said, when we look at what our motivations are, it really is on the business side of things. That's what's exciting, and that's where we want to focus ourselves and grow the bulk of our team. And on the nonprofit side, look to, if we, as we identify projects that we might want to do through the nonprofit, look to hire staff who can execute those projects so we don't have to.
So far it's the same team running both sides.
Virtually, yeah. I mean, it's really me and my co-founder, and then on the it's not team is and yeah. It's time.
Okay. Thank you.
Question on the back.
Yeah. Where do you hire the contractor to do the sales and to manage the company developments?
So we've hired, so we hired a salesperson in the fall for a few months. That was a contact that we had developed through our own personal networks that was looking to do some work, and so it was sort of a convenient hire because it was someone we already knew and had worked with in the past in different jobs. So my co-founder had worked with in the past at a different job. For the design firm, we looked at a number of different firms in the city. Google design firms in the city and see what comes up. I would highly recommend asking for referrals. If you go to one of these companies to work with them, see if you can talk to some of their former clients to get a sense of what kind of work they do and their quality. But there's lists of different people that you can approach, and I think we're looking at hiring a developer in the near future, and so likely we'll be putting out a job posting through normal channels like Indeed and those different things. Also posting in different Facebook groups, like the DMZ has Facebook group. There's Communitech has Facebook groups, so looking at those channels and seeing who might know people, student groups, different things like that, and just getting the word out as broadly as you can about what you're looking for.
Any more questions? Ooh. Okay, you guys are popular. Going from that and then go this way.
You both mentioned the importance of selecting a partner that work well with you, that you have. Sometimes it doesn't happen to be in your life, right?
Good question. So I think for me, it was a friend that I had decided to partner with. Friends are not always the best partners to do because it's you don't want to mix friends with business. In this case, I had known the person for 10 years before starting it, and we were very. I know that because we've done a number of other projects, let's say through school or other things, we worked really well together, and we had. He's an accountant, so he had a similar background, but we sort of specialize in different areas. And he does a lot of like the bookkeeping, for example, and we both do a little bit of customer service if it's ever needed. And then I come up with the concept. So I think it's really important you can gel with the other person. And I think especially for a startup, you're going to be spending so much time with the other person. You want to make sure you really get along well with them. And also you want to know what is their vision with the business. And what are their personal goals? In this case, it was both a side project, and we both knew that we had other priorities, like a day job ahead of it. But if it's a full-time thing, it's really understanding what are their priorities, what are their goals. So it's really getting to know them. As much as I've partnered with someone who is another finance person, I think there is a lot of strength if you're able to partner with someone that has a very different skill set. So for example, as much as one person that we use a lot is a programmer, and while the programmer doesn't have ownership, he's very, very involved because he would be creating all of the apps that we do as well as a website as well. So it's even for the people that you interact with. Think about it as building a team, and you want to make sure that someone else is a lot better at that certain area than yourself. And I think that's really where you can really get that value add, is you find someone that just really brings the different strengths to the table. So it doesn't have to be as much for a partner for sure, but also when you look at potential employees down the road.
Yeah, and so for me, my partner, I didn't know her. So we've been operating the nonprofit for about a year, and one of the nice things about nonprofits is they attract volunteers and people who want to do stuff for free, and you just let them. And so she was working at Mars at the time and had heard about us, was really interested in what we were doing, and reached out to me for a coffee and just to learn more about the organization. And as we got to talking, she offered to volunteer and help out with some of our outreach work. And so that was how she got involved. She did that for a few months, and then her contract at Mars was ending, and we needed to hire someone to do some work, so she started working at the nonprofit with me. And as soon as we started working together on a daily basis, things just really clicked. It became clear that we were a great creative team, that the way we thought about problem solving and approached things was very similar, but also different enough that we really pushed each other to think critically, and just enjoyed working together. And so that was how we kind of met and started. And then as we worked together for longer, we both agreed that there was a bigger opportunity here, and sort of saw it and started getting creative about what a business could look like. And so when we decided to incorporate, we incorporated together as co-founders. But I completely agree with everything that Brian said about really understanding, who is that person, what are their motivations, what does success look like to them. We don't all have the same definition of success and what we're trying to accomplish with something. And you don't necessarily need to have the exact same, you need to probably have the same definition of success for your business. You don't necessarily have to have the same definition of success when it comes to what you personally want to accomplish, but you really need to understand what each person's definition of success is, because that's how you can ensure that you're creating an environment that people feel good about and that they want to keep working at. And that's for so much of particularly the early stage. It's, your motivation is not financial. It's about achieving this bigger thing or this broader vision down the road. And so that's really what you want to do. And I think, for us, our mindsets were very aligned, so the way that we kind of thought about problems and approached things were very similar, but our skill sets were quite different. So she is much stronger in the content creation, education, sort of curating and putting together curriculum. She's really great at that. That's not something that I would say is my strong suit, but I'm much more interested in the business development, sales, sort of growth, thinking about business strategy side of things, and that's what really excites me. And so that's really complementary.
Who's next?
So I have a question for Brian. You said you have both of you, your co-founders, partners, have a day job. Have you ever thought about scaling up your current app and so that it'll become your full-time job? Because you already got a really good customer base, and then once you think about, so what's your plan for next step?
Great question. It's really interesting. I think I really do enjoy my day job a lot. I really like the finance side and doing mergers and acquisitions. So I do have a passion for that. I like the entrepreneurial side. I think for the time being, really my plan is focus a lot on the day job, but there's a few ways to grow my side stuff. Passion projects, they're growing into small businesses, but it's really, I know how to grow the business without being, by having a full-time job, and it doesn't interfere with my full-time job. So the time being, it's really just keep on growing. It's not the stage where I feel like myself or my business partner would want to go and do this full-time. I think if on the boat course side, I think if we're able to scale up more, there'd be opportunity for a person to do it full-time. And I don't necessarily need to be involved full-time. I could have a person to manage the business. And so it's just more where I want to put my time.
Yeah, I have a question for AJ. You mentioned that you talked about doing sales to hatcheries and incubators. right? It's for several months. So how do you, what do you think that is the best way to approach them? Is it through the networking event, talking to them, or get referred to somebody, or cold call them, or email them? What do you do? How will you do differently if you look back?
Yeah, so getting a referral, I think, is probably the best. Getting a really warm referral is probably the best way to get connected to anyone if you're trying to make a sale to them. So what that means is having someone that they respect, that is sort of an expert in their field, email connecting you and saying, you really need to be talking to AJ. She knows what she's doing. She's got this great product. I think you'd really benefit from it. I'm looking, take it from here. And then following up right away when you get that email intro and saying, let's meet. I'd love to talk. That's the ideal. And so how you can get those is through networking. So, I think going to events, talking to everyone you can. I'm a shameless networker, so if I'm somewhere and someone is on a panel talking about something that I think is interesting, or I think they might be interested in what I'm doing, like I will hunt them down before they leave the event and introduce myself and give them my card and get their card and follow up. Following up, like networking is not about introductions, it's about follow-ups. That's where you get the value of it. That's how you build the relationship. No one walks away like just remembering you. It's when you send that follow-up email. I'll go to events and it's, I'll be looking for, okay, who are these people that, they themselves might not be sales targets, but they seem well connected in this space, or they seem like an expert in this space. They seem like someone who should know what I'm doing. And that's how you build some of those relationships. And then as you build a relationship with them, you say, look, this is who I'm trying to sell to. This is what my value is. Do you know anyone who would be interested in what I'm doing, and could you connect me? I used to be coy about that. I used to be like, whatever, like, I'm cool, maybe we should be friends. And it's like, no, ask for what you want. If you want intros, ask for intros. And the worst thing that someone's going to say is no. And most of the time they don't. Like, if you play your cards right and you're, build up a relationship, learn about them, understand what you can do for them, offer to help them. I've built my network over the years, so if they're talking about something and I know somebody interesting who should know about them, I offer to connect them. So it's got to be reciprocal. You can't just go up and demand from a stranger that they help you. But that's how you build that relationship, and that's how you start to get some of those referrals. And so that's the ideal. But if all else fails, cold email, cold call, just I think getting out there and trying to make
most hard thing you struggle with, and how you overcome it. I know being an entrepreneur is very hard. You have to overcome lots of things, and both inside and outside. So, what's the hardest thing you find? You are struggling for a long time.
So this will probably, maybe it won't be different, but I'm doing this full time. So I've gone all in on this project, on this experiment, and that's stressful. Financially, I took a big pay cut from what I was doing before, and I don't regret it. And it's I think before I left my job, I thought I needed a lot more money to be happy than I did. And so I'm really happy with what I'm doing. But there's a lot of uncertainty about, I want to grow and I don't want to, I want to make money, and that's the goal. And that's not certain. When you're an entrepreneur, there's nothing is certain. It's, you just work as hard as you can and you push as hard as you can. And you have to create your own certainty, and you don't always know if you can do that. And so I think that's the hardest thing for me is
is just not always knowing what next month is going to look like. And it's you get a good run going and you're making some good sales, but you don't know how long that's going to last, or if it's all of a sudden going to disappear. And you have to stay hungry and busy and focused, and so that can just be really hard. We create our own certainty by figuring out what is that baseline that we're going to quit at. And that can sound kind of depressing, I think, for someone who might not be doing their own thing. It sounds like you need to follow your dream no matter what. But the reality is, you don't want to follow it down into a hole you can't dig yourself out of. And it can be really empowering to say, you know what, if one day we aren't making this much, or we aren't growing beyond this, we're going to go find real jobs, or we're going to go do this, or we're going to do that. And creating those kind of constraints or those parameters for yourself, I actually find keep me going and keep me focused and keep me motivated, because I know that it's a choice that I'm doing this, and it's not something that I'm stuck with because I started it, and it kind of gives me an out if one day I don't want to be doing it again anymore, which I haven't. That day has not come, and I don't see it coming anytime soon. I'm still having a great time, and we're growing, and everything's going well, but you just never know. And so figuring out how to deal with that uncertainty, I think, is a day-to-day challenge.
So you're happy?
But I'm very happy, yes. Don't worry, Cynthia.
Very well said. I think I echo very much what AJ says. If you're a for-profit business, ultimately you need to generate revenue for that business to survive, whether it's from government grants or whether it is paying customers. You really need the revenue to be able to survive. And so that's the challenge. How do you grow your revenue? But then what that comes to is, how do you really spend your finite time to really grow your business? And so for AJ, there'd be a couple different revenue streams that she has, and same for myself. And it's just, where do you focus that time? And it's not only your time, it's the resources. So if you have a programmer, or you have a developer, or you have an employee, where do you get them to focus their time to really grow the business? And that can change over time, where you find something that works well, it's making money, or a government grant, but then you have to transition. So it's about how can you find that next spot, and where can you really spend your time? So I think that's cash, and I did it as debt, and the business failed, and I paid back every single person that had invested into the business. And so while I had a financial hit to me, I learned so much from that experience, and I learned so much from each thing I've done on the side since, whether it's full-time job or whether the day job, all experiences. And so you really learn by doing, and the big challenge is learn from your mistakes. You make a mistake once, you don't want to do it again. So I really echo that. On an unrelated note, one other tip I have just for people who are interested in the entrepreneurial side is I did a mastermind session. So what's a mastermind session? There was 2 other people that I found who were entrepreneurs who had an online business, a small online business. And we would have a call once a month. And every month we would each have a business challenge that we would talk about. And we would say, please provide your feedback on an email, or please provide your feedback on the website we just launched or app we just launched. And then for the next meeting, we had to have finished everything we said we're going to do. And so because it's a side project, it forced us to complete these tasks. And we also got an outsider's perspective on just a new way of thinking about the business, and also other entrepreneurs who are in maybe a slightly different online space, just getting their feedback. So maybe that's one takeaway I have. I found that to be helpful. I did that for a bit over a year, and maybe a year was a good amount of time. After a year, we found that we knew the businesses, each other so well, we weren't adding as much value to each other, so we decided to disband. But I definitely recommend doing that, because I think getting different perspectives is really helpful, because you may not, if it's just yourself doing something, the customer may not feel the same way, so it's helpful having another feedback.
Anything else?
So I have a question for Brian. So when I'm taking the driving test, like the written test, in BC that I remembered on the website they have their own like exercise questions. So what research did you do, or what did you do to make your question better than that, or why do you think there's a market that people really need an app to prepare for the written question?
Great question. So I think if you're 16 years old, a lot of them don't really like the handbook as much because it's very dry, and they really like having an app because it's more interactive, and so they're able to learn quickly. My app could be seen as a complement to the handbook or a replacement depending on each individual person. So I think that's why one person would be interested in it. It's also free, whereas a handbook might cost $20. So I know I've heard the sales of handbooks in a few places. But the other piece is for an individual user. Or I guess how do we come up with the content? We bought a number of handbooks. In fact, I got a handbook last week from both the Cayman Islands as well as Bermuda to be able to add more questions there. So you're really going through like a handbook and making sure you have really good questions. That's ultimately what it comes down to. And it's also using your user base. So if sometimes we have about 34,000 questions on the database across. If a question is incorrect, I have a button at the bottom that says if you notice that there's an error, let us know. And so we get feedback, and then we're automatically able to update that answer. So it's really using your users to be able to improve your content, whether it's apps or whether it's other products.
So for all the questions, do you come up with that question, or you say you buy a handbook and you change some of the question posted on your website?
So there's copyright. If I were to, let's say I find some handbooks, or some state governments, they actually have questions, but I can't copy that word for word because it's their copyright. So we have to come up with our own questions. But there's a lot of questions that are similar among states. Like, what do you do when you get to a red light? You stop. So there's a lot of common questions, and so that really helped in order to have like a good starting base. But after that, after your starting base, you really want to come up with value add questions. So it's really, sometimes we get questions from users, to be honest with you. They submit a number of questions we may not have in our database, and so we would get the answer and add it to the database too. So I think I guess one message is really just listen to your user base and to be able to improve your product.
Last question in audience, if there's any. No? Okay, great. One more.
Okay. If there are a couple potential investors, and some investors may want to buy more company share from you, or another one want to pay more money on yourself, maybe they want to pay salary on you. So if you are in this situation, what would you choose?
So, sorry, just to paraphrase, there's another investor. Is that investor also involved in the business day to day?
Yes.
And so it's really like a co-founder. They want to buy more of the business and then maybe take less of a salary. Is that it? So you're trying to figure out, do you want to have more cash in salary as opposed to ownership? Yeah. I guess it's a tough question. Maybe one general thing is if you are starting with a business and there's two people, you don't really want to generate too much conflict of interest. So if two people bring the same skill sets in different areas, 50-50 is a good way to have it so you don't have issues later on. But I think it's taking a look at the business. I'm a financial person, so I try and figure out what makes the most sense financially. So it really, I'd have to do a bit of work on that for the research.
Yeah, I'd echo that. My co-founder and I are 50-50. And the reason why we decided to do that, partly, to mitigate conflict, but also really more because when we looked at it and said, okay, what value are we each bringing, and how vital are we both to this company? It was pretty even. Sometimes there's a breakout where there's someone who, who's like, I have an idea. And then, you have two other people who are doing all the work to actually make that idea happen. That person might not take on as much equity because at the end of the day, it's all about the execution and so you kind of have to look at each situation sort of uniquely for what it is. Yeah, so it's a tricky question just to answer. I don't think there's. I actually did a lot of research into best practices and formulas around co-founders and share equity and stuff, and there isn't a perfect and taking it from there.
Like one of the things is, if it is at the startup phase, the outcome should be that both of you are happy and that you both want to do work together going forward, especially if you're just starting up. Like that's like ultimately a lot of the startups will fail, and so it's really important that you're both really happy if it's a new type of idea. So I'd have that in the back of your mind.
Great. Okay. A few house cleaning stuff. We have the room.